You included the,
There it goes.
you included the link of our last meeting on that, on our invitation for this one. That was a good idea.
Yeah, and we're putting them all on the website. It's just, our website's under construction, but they all are up there. So,
Great.
This is which website now? You're talking MVC?
yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So, and what they're called then? Yeah. I mean, I hope that they can be found. Thank you so much for doing whatever it is that can be done to make that happen. I know it's not easy. It's very.
Gail has asked us to share them with MVTV too, so that they could be on their network. So, because MVTV used to keep our
I am so
videos.
glad to hear that.
That's
I
great.
am so glad we're finally getting to perhaps democracy.
Can only hope.
Sorry,
All right,
I'm
We'll
just
make it
watching
happen.
the waiting room. Okay, so Richard, Bill, thank you so much for coming on a short notice to see us. Bill's going to give us an overview of the work that he did on Millbrook Watershed and see what he has found and how it will impact Tisbury Great Pond. And then we're going to do a brief talk. I've thought about doing a freshwater survey, do that survey over again. So I just figured we would have Bill come, and he did the original one, so maybe he can help us get the next one going. So thank you so much, Bill.
Yep, you're welcome. I'm one member of the Millbrook Watershed Committee, which is, I think it's probably 7 other people who are all volunteers. There are a few of us who are quite familiar with water resources, which helps. And this program we've been carrying out for the last year is a follow-up on the, I think it's 2016 watershed study that was contracted out to a consultant. And in that report, there was a recommendation to gather more data, particularly on stream flow. The Millbrook, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, but it's pretty much a 4-mile long stream that flows into the north end of Tisbury Great Pond at Town Cove. Its watershed is estimated at about 3,400 acres. So it's about a third of the total Tisbury Great Pond watershed with that one stream watershed. Our program, it was divided up into 3 broad components. One was water quality sampling. So we'd be gathering water, sending it off to the UMass lab and analyzing it for nitrogen and phosphorus, basically. We had 8 water quality stations that we sampled about 13 times over the course of the last year. We're still waiting for the data to come back from the lab. They're slower than cold molasses, but we expect to be getting that pretty soon. We also purchased I think it's about $10,000 of equipment to measure the flow in the stream. And the idea was to measure it toward the headwaters, and then at regular intervals, once the stream enters the outwash area. This device uses a magnetic sensor, and it's quite accurate as long as you use it properly, I guess is the right way to put it. It's very easy to enter the data wrong into it. But we've had 7 different flow stations that we're measuring, starting up on the Woods property, up on North Road, and then one at State Road, just below Priester's Pond, 2 at Scotchman's Lane, above the lane and below the so-called Whiting Dam. Another one at the Garden Club just below Mill Pond. And we added one at Factory Brook, which is a small discharge from Mill Pond that would otherwise bypass our sampling location at Mill Pond. And one of the most interesting things that popped out so far is that there isn't as much water gained in the stream from Priester's Pond down to the Garden Club site as there should be. And sometimes the flow at just below Priester's is greater than the flow at both Scotchman's and at the Garden Club. And this is something that Kent Healy theorized, that the stream might lose water around the Scotchman's Lane area. And he had based that on a water table elevation from a well over at what was Bill Honey's property. I'm not sure where it is now, over near the antique shop. I can't remember the
The
name.
art gallery, the red art
Yes,
gallery. Yeah.
That's it. Thank you. And so we're sort of confirming that there's a loss of water that's going on down at toward the south end of the stream. Now, this may relate to the dam at Mill Pond, backing the water up and raising the water table around the stream itself, so that there's a discharge that goes on.
Mhm.
It's not lost water because it's still going to be going into Tisbury Gray Pond, but it's a loss of flow in the stream.
Right.
So what we're doing is building what's called a staging curve. A staging curve is sort of a curve that will give you an equation to convert the height of the stream to the volume of flow in the stream at that location. So instead of having to go out with our $10,000 meter, we have a water level logger that's at each of these locations that I think it's every half an hour, it's taking a water depth measurement.
Mhm.
So once we have the staging curves and the formula determined, we can apply it to all of that data and get a really accurate flow number for the stream for this year, for this past year. The other thing we're doing, and we just started it, is to collect more detailed invertebrate data. These would be crane fly larvae that are in the stream. And these organisms are good indicators of the quality of the habitat. We started to do that in the previous go round and didn't really get enough data. So we're working with Greg Whitmore, who's up in New Hampshire. He's an aquatic entomologist. And we're basically just doing the grunt work. We're collecting the specimens, and he'll identify them and characterize the habitat based on that. So that's where we're at. I can't give you any information on the water quality. One of the things we hope to sort out there is that it appears that the stream may carry more phosphorus than typical freshwater streams. Usually nitrogen is in excess by a good deal in fresh waters. But in the case of Mill Brook, it's not as much more as it might be in other fresh waters. And we don't know where that's coming from. It could be anoxia in one of the impoundments on the stream, where during the summer months, the pond gets stratified, so the bottom water doesn't mix, and the oxygen goes down to zero, and that releases phosphorus from the sediment.
Mm,
We haven't found any proof of that yet, so that's hanging out there as a kind of a remote possibility. The other possibility is that there are phosphatic minerals in the deposits that make up the moraine. The green sand is one of them that contains phosphorus. And it's possible that the stream is tapping into that resource somehow. So we're hoping that by sampling up in the water, up in the moraine in the stream, as well as down below, we can see some sort of an indication as to where that might be coming from. That's about all I've got on where we are at the moment. Happy to answer questions.
Anna,
Sure.
go ahead.
Did somebody say?
Anna, go
Yeah,
ahead.
okay. So I have two things I would love to know. What was the nitrogen level? I would love to know that, what you have found. And
Mhm.
also, I would say that the phosphorus comes, each household puts out many pounds of phosphorus every year through their septic systems, and those septic systems are very close to the water bowl that ends up being the stream, right? And so all that phosphorus, it doesn't have a chance to be captured in the soil the way it normally is. Phosphorus moves very slowly through the subsoil, through the water, and if it doesn't have enough ground to go through before it hits water, then it just gets flushed into the water. So that's what I think is the answer to that situation. So those are two comments I'm making.
Yeah, that's a real possibility, that there just isn't enough soil to for the phosphorus to get stuck in. It's very strongly bonded in the soil, but over time it saturates the soil's ability to take up any more, and then the phosphorus front moves a little further. So it's possible that some of the older systems have saturated their soil. Could be.
May I say something? Bill, can I respond for that for a moment?
Sure.
But the fact about that is that the newer a septic system is, the more phosphorus leaches through the, just the sandy layer at the bottom and straight into the groundwater. And because it gets into, I'm losing my train of thought here, but did you get what I meant by that? It travels, it gets released from the septic systems and goes through then a much shorter distance before it reaches water level, namely the stream and its surroundings. It really, it's not enough to have it captured. Just like you said, it's not enough for the soil to capture. It goes right through. And what I'm saying is, here's my point. The newer the septic system is, the more phosphorus it releases, because it has no biomat liner at all for years in most cases. So that is the culprit right there. And I'm going to talk about that later. Thank you so much for all your research. It sounds fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Yeah, it is the natural soil that the phosphorus bonds to. So, if you're putting in a straight sand infiltration bed under the septic system, that is not going to absorb very much phosphorus at all.
Right.
So it's that natural soil, and it has a large capacity to suck up phosphorus and pretty much permanently take it out of the picture. But whether that's adequate or not, I don't have a good indication yet on that. And on the nitrogen question, we just don't have the data yet. I expect in the next couple of weeks to be getting all that, and then we'll have to go through it, process it, and try to figure out what it means.
This is what I would love to see, is just some kids, high school kids, going out, scooping up some samples along the stream, 100 samples or whatever, and then just doing a strip test for the nitrogen, ammonia, nitrate, nitrite, and then you have your answer, right?
I don't think those are accurate enough.
School weekend project, high school Saturday afternoon project.
Yeah, I think it would have to be a little fancier equipment than a strip test.
No, it doesn't actually. They told me that the people managing the sewage treatment plant on 2 of those different plants on the island, actually, they told me that those strips are just like 99.9999 as accurate as the fanciest test that you can go with.
Yeah, but they're talking 2 or 3 or 5 parts per million, and in the stream we're talking about a fraction of that. So
And we have the right strips, the right strips.
Yeah, the detection limits just aren't as low on the strips.
Yep.
Well, there are strips that go lower. You divide it by 10 or whatever. I've never done that, but because I haven't needed to. But in this case, I know it is needed to. But anyway, that's a discussion that we can have later. I just wanted to plant the seeds of what it is that's possible to do.
Okay, thanks, Anna. Carol,
Hi, thank you for such a detailed study, and I commend you for volunteering to do that. Speaking of students, I was thinking, your invertebrates, it's a great thing to have students, high school students, gathering your inverts. And
Right.
then you can, from there, you can, tell the water quality, or have your contact person reach out, have the kids do that. And it's a fun activity. And if they can become, we used to do that in Minnesota. I had my students become river keepers.
Yep.
And so we would every year we would do our water quality, and then we would also take all the inverts, and they would classify them and everything. It's a fun thing to do, just a thought.
Fabulous, fabulous.
Yeah, kids would love to do what we're doing. We put up a large square net downstream, and then somebody kicks the cobbles and turns them over, and that releases the larvae, and they float downstream into the net. And kids would be thrilled to do that, I think.
Fabulous. Yes, of course. Anything to get them outside into the mud,
Yeah.
the mud. John, got a question.
I love it.
John?
And then they learn all
Yes,
the
thanks.
biology and everything.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Bill, it's great to see you after a long time, and also to know
Likewise.
you're still, thanks, that you're just still keeping your hands and no doubt your feet in the water with all of this. I'm wondering if you could describe the frame of reference or the context for the work, because you've described the work, but I'm wondering, particularly to help others who might listen to this, what it is that you would see as a set of possible outcomes if, for example, the water quality indices are incredibly good, that there are low levels of nutrients, or if they're incredibly bad one way or the other. And then the other thing I wanted to note, particularly since I see that Omar, is Omar still on the call? I guess my understanding is that the town of West Tisbury Board of Health may not have, from the past, a precise indicator of what type of septic system is in place at any particular property or location, including, for example, whether it's got an innovative alternative system. And so I thought if it does turn out that you detect high nutrient levels, to run them to earth, it would be useful to get that information. And if it isn't being recorded, then maybe as time goes on, we can update the records of the Board of Health in West Tisbury to include those that variable.
Great.
Yeah, I think one thing that I hope will come out of the data we're gathering is an accurate figure for the loading of nitrogen to Tisbury Great Pond for this 1 year, because we'll be combining fairly detailed nitrogen and phosphorus measurements with the flow numbers. And so those two, concentration and volume, can be used to determine the weight of nitrogen that's going into the pond. And that will then cycle back to an indication of the accuracy of our model, the model that was developed by the commission and vetted by UMass. And then that in turn, will provide input or indications as to the accuracy of the model as a whole, beyond the Millbrook. And we've started talking about possibly doing the same kind of program in the Tiasquam, which would be another major source of nitrogen into Tisbury Great Pond. It's a big job, and we're maybe not quite at the point where the crew that we have are ready for that kind of commitment. As to the septic systems, undoubtedly are a significant source of nitrogen in the watershed, and I think it's a good idea to have a database that indicates the nature of all the systems. If there may well be cesspools out there, I would not be surprised. I'm sure there are a lot of leaching pits instead of leaching fields. I'm pretty sure that there are innovative alternative systems that are out there. And I know the Board of Health is, as part of the course of their regular responsibilities, keeps track of what's on each lot. But whether it's all assembled into a single database by watershed, I am not sure.
Chris actually did that for the Tisbury Great Pond assessment for the 208 that we're doing. It's a really
great.
cool map.
Yeah.
She kind of did it by, I think mostly by dates. I'd have to ask her for sure. But when Title V came about,
Right.
so anything after that would definitely be Title V. And then the ones that predated that didn't say that they were upgraded, she put those in. And then she also put the IA systems in. So that's really good. That's part of the
Excellent.
the Tisbury Great Pond 208 plan.
That will be really interesting to see.
And I would love to see something done in the Tiasquam. And we just received a grant from UNH, or not from UNH, with UNH, that we're looking at stormwater remediation. So maybe we could do some kind of stormwater projects on the streams too. So when you're out there trouncing around, kind of, keep an eye, if you can think of something that, if we could do a constructed wetland or, somehow slow that water down and get the nutrients pulled out, that would be.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to what you find, because Town Cove is pretty much a mess. The nutrient levels are really high in Town Cove. So
Yeah.
we need to find some fixes for there.
It's so overloaded with freshwater input. It's just
Right.
got a huge area that's contributing, and
Yeah, it was funny. It's after it had been opened one year, one of my interns called me and they're like, "This is like totally fresh water. Is the meter working right now?" Yeah, because it's been drained and it's only fresh water. They're like, "Oh, okay." It was nice that they were on top of things and paying attention, but they're like, "There's no salt." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's just got so much fresh water."
May
I
make a
remember.
comment, please? May I make a comment, please?
Well, hold on. I got Craig's hand is up.
Yes, it is.
Give Craig a chance.
Bill, long time no see. You say high phosphorus levels, but is the Great Pond still nitrogen limited? I remember John Teal claiming that it was phosphorus limited from time to time.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, the elevated phosphorus that we've found is primarily in the stream itself. The Great Pond, I think, on a macro scale, is clearly nitrogen limited, and it may be that periodically, in the coves, when the pond has been opened and drained down and the coves have become fresh, I suppose it's possible that there could be elevated phosphorus there that would make it less clear whether it was still nitrogen limited or not. Possibly it goes over to phosphorus limited, but I have not seen that I can recall.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that question. That's a good one.
Hey, go ahead, Anna.
Yes, thank you. So I need to make this comment again, that the newer septic system is the more phosphorus and nitrogen it puts into the groundwater. The newer it is not the old cesspools, it is not the pre-95 Title V's, and then it's not even the older Title V's, it's the newer they are, the more pollution they cause. And I just want you, I mean, does this sound like crazy to you, or is this something that we can take for granted at this point?
Do you want me to respond to
Yes,
that?
whoever.
Yeah, I think that older systems, both by virtue of their installation methodology and by their age, have had an opportunity to create a fairly substantial biological mat.
Yes, Bill.
Yeah, and that in itself takes out
Yes.
some nitrogen and some phosphorus.
Thank God.
Newer systems haven't had an opportunity to get to that point. I think they will. I think, even if you got 4 feet of sand under a leaching field, at the interface between the sand and the soil, there will be some ponding of that effluent, and you'll gradually build a biomat of some form. Whether it's a substantial mat that's going to be removing significant nutrients or not, I'm not sure. I don't know enough about that.
I do. Okay.
And the other concern with that is that we have so many houses that aren't occupied year round. That causes issues too, right?
No problem.
Problem for the mat, it just prolongs the time.
It takes how long? I guess I'm thinking of some of the IA systems need to have
Oh, yeah.
constant flow, or they
Bill is absolutely right. The biomat cracks open if it doesn't get water, the sewage coming down, and then it becomes just like a sieve, and then you have to start all over again. So you're absolutely right, Bill. Thank you.
John.
Some of the IA systems, Richard, I think you're right, don't perform well with seasonal use.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
True too.
John, you got another question?
Yes, thanks. Just looking through my old notes. As far as I understand it, West Tisbury Board of Health has improved its notes considerably since 10 or 20 years ago. But my understanding is that they still are not, for example, differentiating or indicating if there is an innovative alternative system, exactly what type of system it is.
Huh.
And that doesn't seem as if there's the possibility, for example, there is no database in which one could search on one thing or another. It's all lot by lot.
Yeah.
So this, I think, is something that, particularly in areas that are hotspots or whatever, might be worth investing in to make it available along the lines of what I'm pleased to hear Sherry saying about what Chris did.
Yeah, certainly they have that information because they approved the system, but whether it's gotten into a database, yeah, that's a good question. And I think maybe, as Sherry said, Chris Seidel's work to get that categorized, maybe a big step forward there.
And I don't think they're being tested, nearly like they need to be. I hear they go wrong a lot. People don't discover it until it's been wrong for quite a while.
All of the IA systems that are installed now are part of the Barnstable monitoring system. And so all their monitoring is sent to Barnstable, and they're flagged if they're not having their monitoring done. So, and they would probably, they'll know which system they have too. So we could tease that out as to which IA systems are there. But they're all they're all part of that system. It takes a lot of the work off the health agents, just having them part of the system, so that if they're not current with their monitoring, they give them a heads up, and they have to get in touch with them. And they,
When did that start?
I wished Omar was here. I'm not sure when, but I know several of the towns on island have it now.
I almost think that might have started before I retired. Now that Sherry mentioned it, that does sound familiar, and so that would have been 2013 maybe, or sometime just before that.
Yeah, because I know, talking to Matt Poole, it was so much work for them to track them down. And so now it's all computerized, and they're supposed to do their reporting. If they don't do their reporting, they're flagged. So because they just had file cabinets and they just couldn't keep up with it. So.
Yep.
So do we know how many IE systems there are on the island now?
I think we can find that out. I can ask the Board of Health. We're going to be talking to them about doing some testing for PFAS in groundwater. So, or in septic tanks. So we'll ask them about that if we can get that count.
Yeah, be interesting. Okay, anybody else? I see John's hand still up, but I think you're done. Craig's hand was up, but I think he disappeared. Oh no, there he is. He took his hand down.
His hand down.
Yeah, okay. All right, is that it, Bill, or you got some more? Did you go over the second part, the island's fresh surface water surveys?
No, we didn't quite get to that.
All right.
Yeah, I think let me just float this out there. I think it's important to sample the surface fresh waters just to get an idea of baseline water quality. And we did some of that back in I think it was the early 2000s, using volunteers to collect the water samples. And unfortunately, we did not send them off to a high-level lab. I think a lot of the analyses was done locally, where the lab capability was fine for nitrogen in drinking water, but it could not get precise enough for fresh waters. We did do from time to time some sampling in Millbrook, but nothing like what we've done the past year. And I think that kind of more intensive sampling is probably what's necessary. And I think it's a good idea to have at least a few easily accessed sampling sites so that it can be done fairly quickly. And certainly collecting the water samples themselves is something that volunteers could do. It's not rocket science collecting the samples. So given the large number of freshwater resources that are out there, I think volunteers probably are the right way to try to go at that.
Fabulous.
And I think where the ponds are deeper, it's probably a good idea, like Seth's pond. It probably has about 12-foot depth at the deeper point in it. Maybe it's a little deeper than that. And in those situations, it's good to sample at the surface and at depth. So, a rowboat's going to be necessary to deal with that.
Swimming.
Yeah, except you stir up the water column swimming.
That's right.
So yeah, I think it's well worth starting a program, and I think the only feasible way to do it, given all the water sampling that's going on in the coastal resources, the only feasible way to do it is with volunteers, I think. I'm sure Sherry doesn't have. I suppose you could get more interns and have a freshwater crew out there.
I had thought about that.
Just don't bring them in from off island. We don't
Yep.
need more people on the island.
Yeah, they need a place to live.
Hmm.
Right? I mean, yeah,
Oh, just a-
island interns would be great.
Now, the other
I
thing-
try to get island interns. It's not always easy.
Yeah.
A lot of times they want more money.
Okay,
Yeah,
that is, high schoolers, but any kids, just guided by one person or a gang of a few adults, just, they will love it. And then they'll have pizza and ice cream afterwards.
Mm.
Yep.
What a way to spend Saturday.
It gives them a buy-in to the protection of the water resources too. When you get,
Yes.
yes, yes.
And think of all the biology they learn and all the math and all the, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
So
I've tried to do a program with the high school. It's just a lot of our sampling is done in the summer, and that's when they're not there. So, but there is an environmental class that I'm probably going to get an intern from.
Yeah.
So
put out the
we're
word, that's what
working
we
on
need to
that.
do. Put together a program, put out the word, and they'll come streaming.
yeah, I
It'll be
think,
a party day,
I think summer is the time to focus on those. I wouldn't
Yes, great.
expend too much time with winter or even late fall through spring.
Summer's coming up right now,
I would sample in the summer.
Yeah, perfect.
I see John's hand and then I see Diamond's hand. John, go ahead.
Thanks. Very glad to have this issue raised by Bill and by Sherry. Bill, you'll remember that 20 or so years ago, you and I
As close
with
as I can
roughly,
get to.
what's that?
That's as close as my memory allows me to get to, 20 or 30, yeah.
I
Yeah,
remember you in the 70s, Bill. You were the first guy to start talking about the nitrogen bomb.
Yeah.
You were the first herald of the nitrogen bomb. Thank you for that.
You go ahead, John.
Sorry, John.
Hear that?
the Paul Revere's. But 20 or so years ago, Bill Wilcox and I and Rusty Walton, with the obviously given Bill's position at the time, the cooperation of the MDC, which is important, organized a survey, a one-off survey as a baseline of as much fresh water as we could get to on the island. So we had plans to, or hopes of dealing with the streams and so on, but we weren't really able to get to that. But it actually was done at a fairly high level because we had an extraordinarily highly qualified, superb volunteer, courtesy of our tax dollars in the form of Krista Lee, who ran the North Atlantic Coastal Laboratory at the Cape Cod National Seashore. And she and an associate of hers came to the island and stayed for some days when we did all this sampling, and then she took care of the analysis. We also collaborated with the lab in Aquina. So I'm wondering, Bill, what you think of the possibility of, I don't know if Krista is still there at the seashore, but I'm wondering what you think of the possibility of basically replicating that effort all these years on, even if we could work it out to do sample at the same spots.
Yep.
We could repeat the type of sampling we did before, and if necessary, if you think it's a good idea, augment it in some way, and that might just be complementary to a more sustained, more limited monitoring of particular of surface water on the island. It's fresh.
Yeah, now that you jogged my memory, I remember that sampling run around we did. And my recollection is that was just a one-off, right? We just did the one set of samples from a whole number of ponds. And I think that's the potential flaw there, is that a one-off, it gives you a starting point, but it's kind of like drawing a line. You need at least 2 points to get a straight line, and there's a need for more data. And I have often thought it would be really useful to try to get a graduate level student doing a master's or a PhD to really dive deep into some of the resources and do the intensive sampling that I think would start to give us a much greater understanding. I think that's one possible way to go.
I wonder, Bill, were those samples tested? All those samples that were collected, were they tested at all?
Yeah, Krista ran the samples back at the Cape Cod National Seashore. So yeah, that data is in the files somewhere.
Can we see that? I would like to see that.
It was up as a spreadsheet at the MBC. I don't know if it still is, as I recall,
Yeah.
from
I
that
would-
survey. And
Any
Bill,
help to get a link to that would be great. Because that sounds like a valuable, even if it was just a one-off, as you say, it gives you a snapshot of what happened at that particular day in those particular times, you know, places.
Bill, I take your point about the limitations of a point
Right.
and the need for more data. And I think, you know,
It would be
if I
great.
may, to jog your memory, we talked also many years ago about, for example, the possibility of getting eco-hydrological work done for Old House, Uncle Seth's, and James Pond
Mhm.
to nail down what was going on there hydrologically, as well as with the health of the ponds themselves. And there are even people that we thought about who might be able to do that sort of thing. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's the current priority, but my suggestion of replicating that work we did X years ago is just to kind of get a foot in the door
Right.
to get the whole thing moving again.
Yeah.
And I think, am I right, Sherry, in recollecting that you had mentioned some possibility of connecting with U.S. Geological Survey or something connected to fresh water?
Yeah, they have been in touch with me thinking about doing a study of the impacts of sea level rise on groundwater. It was funny, the study that they did on the Cape, the freshwater lens just kind of floated up, but on top of the saltwater.
Mhm.
So they didn't really see a huge impact. But we would still like to do the groundwater flow analysis.
It floated up because it was being inundated with salt
Yeah.
water underneath.
Yeah.
And so the
But
whole
you know, it can
lens-
only go so far.
And then, of course, that makes the lens shallower.
Diamond, did you still have a question?
Pardon me?
Diamond had a question.
Yeah, this is Roxanne Ackerman.
I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
can't keep
Oh,
track of
that's
everybody's
okay.
names.
Right,
I just have to read. I read what's on your screen.
right, I'm good. That worked. Thank you, Richard. I would say you've gone on further, but when you were talking about high school students, there is an initiative to do co-op, and even if you wrote like sort of an independent study, curriculum for those kids, then they'd be occupied in the summer and they'd be getting, good high school credits. Just, I could take it further, but that's
Pay them like $20 or $30 a day per student. It's pittance what a consultant would need to do. Pay them for the day.
well,
And pizza and ice cream.
Plus, it gives them access to properties they shouldn't be walking on, probably.
okay.
Oh,
Thank
no.
you. Okay.
That was a question I had for Bill was, do you have problems with some of the private landowners getting access to these places you want to test?
Well, since the new acquisition that Seven Gates has moved in, they've become much more strict about allowing anybody into any of their property.
This is for the good of the community. I think that takes precedence. Whatever frequency you need to get in and do your testing, you get eminent domain to do so. Period.
I would hope so. They're protecting their property. I mean, geez, quite
We
frankly.
have the rights for public health and the environment.
There you go.
They have no precedence over that.
Anybody else have any new questions for Bill? John, go ahead.
Just to add to the point here, one of the wonderful things about that survey that we did with Rusty Walton and with the enormously important help of Krista Lee, is that we did get permission to go into private land that is normally extremely unlikely to do so. And that happened as a result of personal relationships
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
people involved.
Yeah.
Whether it was the Seven Gates Corporation or the Onassis land. And so we have those measures, but I'll withhold a comment on some points that have been made, but I would think that if it's not intrusive and if the trade-offs are made clear, especially obviously the advantages of the data being provided and trust can be established, I can't see why
Well,
ultimately
here's
you wouldn't be able to get
another-
access to anywhere that is significant for this kind of testing.
Here's another option, and that is that there may be no need at all to go over private property. There are so many places where there's public access to the various points of the various brooks. And so I think that's all that's needed.
Okay, any more questions for Bill? I'm not seeing any.
I have one more if you don't mind. Bill, where do we go from here with freshwater research?
Yeah, good question. I believe the water table elevations, I think, are still being collected through Sherry and the USGS. So keeping track of the response of the groundwater to changing climate, I think is real important. And maybe diving a little deeper into the nature of the recharge that occurs. You get a given rainfall that saturates the upper soil level, and that water gradually moves down into the groundwater. And one of the questions we've often had is what portion of the annual rainfall actually makes it to the groundwater and recharges it. And
Good question.
Mhm.
not sure I have the numbers exactly right, but the UMass people in their models, I think, were using either 26 or 27 inches out of the 46 or 7 that we get. And Kent Healy felt like it should be closer to 18 inches. That's a huge volume.
What are you talking about? I'm sorry. What's the 18, the thickness of the water lens, or what is it that you're?
No, the portion of the annual rainfall that actually percolates down and reaches
Okay.
the groundwater.
Yeah.
So it's either 18 inches out of 47 or
Gotcha.
26 or 7 out of
Got you.
47.
Totally. Yes, that is, yes. In
And-
other words,
and
we
it's-
don't get 48 inches of rainwater recharge. We get maybe 18 or
Just
27.
a fraction, yeah.
Right.
And
That-
the other part of it is the trying to figure out what the water budgets are in the coastal ponds is very tricky. How much groundwater area contributes to the coastal pond?
Mhm.
What's the stream flow coming in? How much is lost by seeping through the barrier beach when it's closed?
Mhm.
And how much goes out to the ocean when it's cut open and drains?
Mhm.
Direct rainfall on the pond, all those numbers we have pretty good approximations, but with Tisbury Great Pond, we had a really tough time making the water budget work out. It should be that all the inputs are equal by the outputs to the ocean.
And to the air, of course.
But we had a big chunk of apparent water that I don't know where it went.
Not
And
evaporation?
I think that led Kent Healy to speculate that there might be an impervious layer under the pond, and some of the groundwater from some portion of the watershed may go under Tisbury Great Pond and never show up in the pond. I don't like that idea, but it's an explanation of
Mhm.
what we were finding. And I think if we refine our numbers more, we'll probably get a better idea and a closer approximation of inputs and outputs.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you very much, Bill.
My
We
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Good to see you guys again.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Bill, for all your great work over so many years, and you're still doing it.
Thanks, Bill.
Fantastic.
Yeah, keep plugging.
Moving target
Thank you,
too.
Bill.
Thank you.
Right, Sherry, do we just want to throw it open for a minute to see if anybody's got anything they want to report on, or do we
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know about before we go to Anna's presentation? Okay, has anybody got anything else they want to bring up? We know we just had some beach planting last weekend, and I've seen some new fences over on State Beach.
Earth Day
Somebody-
cleanup?
Oh yeah, that's coming up, not next weekend, weekend after, right?
Yes.
Yep, they're looking for volunteers to help get the bags ready to go and all that stuff.
And then Climate Change Week will be in May with
That's right.
Liz. But
That's
I'll
right.
tell you definitely more about that.
Yeah, it's gonna be a busy week, very busy
Yes.
week. All right, Anna, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you shared with the Tisbury Board of Health and how that went?
Yeah, okay, well, I can tell you that I was very happy with it. But there's still a huge obstacle to overcome, and it will be, it is a big obstacle. But so I'm going to start to kind of get myself grounded and to lay a base here. And I'm very grateful to John for helping me to edit this and say it in such a way, hopefully, that it will be easy to hear and everybody can get their brain in gear, so to speak. I don't know what I'm saying, but anyway.
Anna, would you like to share your screen? Excuse me.
Not yet. Okay, I want to just say, or maybe not even at all. I can say this now. Everybody's received it, right? Everybody's got it through email, the presentation. Did everybody get it? I wonder. Has anybody looked at it? Maybe not. Okay. All right. Anyway, let me go ahead. Okay. More than a quarter century ago, a new way was invented to prevent nitrogen from polluting our ponds and our groundwater. That was the Solviva nitrogen filter system, a simple insulated chamber filled with wood chips and other living things. And it resulted in an almost total removal of the nitrogen without any odors, flies, overflows, or other nuisance. And it was obviously far less costly than any other of the other AI systems that have since been developed, and seemingly also far more reliable. So over all these years, the Solviva filter system proved to be consistently effective and reliable. And the massive grease problem at the Black Dog Tavern could have been so easily solved by just adding a small dumpster filled with wood chips, an easily exchangeable filter between the pump chamber and the Solviva filter. But DEP refused to allow that from happening. The Solviva filter system is also by far the least costly of all the AI systems developed so far. At least I have not seen anything that is less costly. And almost 2 years ago, I think it was 2003, a few of us got together to deal with a nitrogen problem. We called it POW, Protect Our Water. And as more people joined, it became the Martha's Vineyard Water Alliance. You all know these things. I'm just kind of laying the base. In spite of all the work that we have done over all these many years, DEP has been continuing to require Title V. And consequently, more Title V nitrogen than ever is polluting our ponds. DEP has also been running a program for the purpose of developing AI systems, costing many, many millions of our taxpayers' money. However, their program is a nightmare of obstructions and immense costs, and it takes years to reach a permit. Years, and at least $100,000 to get to permit stage, and some are paying millions for it. Now let's take a look at what the law requires. Here's a fact. The Clean Water Act, signed into law in 1972, and still totally up there, valid, on, not off or diminished in any way. It prohibits all pollution from getting into our groundwater and surface waters, including nutrients. That's what the law says, okay? Here's another fact. DEP Title V regulations do cause massive amounts of pollution in our groundwater and ponds. We all know this. Ipso facto, I don't know if that's the correct way to say it, but it sounded. Ipso facto, thus, therefore, the Title V, DEP Title V regulations are in flagrant violation of federal law, which is also our state law. Now, let's talk about what we want to do about it, please. Was that acceptable, John? Anyway, I am hoping, what do we want to do about it? That's the end of my presentation. And I'm not even going to show the slides, because you can take your time. You can see that in your, at home, at taking your own time about showing it, whatever number of times or whatever detail you want to. You can enlarge every single design and everything. So I'll leave that up to you to do that if you think it's important. And otherwise, I would love to hear, what do we want to do about this situation? Anybody?
Well, go ahead,
Yeah.
Bill.
Yeah, I was going to say, I found DEP's process for getting innovative alternative systems into place to be extraordinarily frustrating.
Thank you.
They move at a glacial pace, and even when it's clear that the innovative systems are unlikely to create any more pollution than a conventional Title V,
Yeah.
they still have this multi-year expensive process that has to be done. And one way to try to get at this is to try to change their method of approving systems. Just get the innovative systems out there, be sure that they're safe, and put them out there and see how they work.
Yes. Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
I
Thank you.
don't know whether there's any hope of that ever happening, because
We have to make it happen. For God's sake, this is democracy. Let's make it happen. We have a right, we have an obligation to make this happen. All we
think
have to do is make
there
it.
are probably people in DEP that have a vested interest in the process, the process, and they
Oh, yes, of course.
going to be very resistant to doing that. But
Yeah, I'm not going to use the word, but
Oh, don't use that word.
okay.
My impression is it is a political thing, and I don't know if they're trying to protect the status quo of contractors and engineers that are
You know
responsible
that. You know it perfectly
doing
well.
what they're doing. But I guess we have to start with our legislators, and I think you have reached out to them, haven't you, Anna?
I've never talked to a legislator. I went
Well,
straight.
our two.
All right.
No.
I
Yes, I
can
have.
only
Yes,
keep
I take
quiet
it back.
for so
I take
long.
that back. I've done that
Oh.
several
I
times.
can only
I've done
keep
that several
quiet
times. Okay,
for
I've done that
so
several
long.
times.
Okay. Oh, hold on. Who's Andre?
I was
Andre,
answering your question. That's what I was doing.
okay,
This
good.
is Drew Osei from the Mass DEP.
Real
Hello
well said.
there.
I can only
Hello
keep
there,
quiet
Drew.
for so long. I'm just going to say this and leave, because I can see there's no grace for space of actually communicating properly in this meeting. Now, number one, it's apparent that no one knows the objective of the IA program here. No one knows.
We all know.
IA program
Hey,
is
Anna,
not.
please listen. Let him talk.
The IA program was not designed to fix nutrient issues on
That's
the Cape
correct.
or the islands.
That's
It was
correct.
not designed for that purpose.
We all know.
So if you're trying to apply that solely for habitat restoration, it's going to be tough. All right. So you have to talk about things within context. That's number one. Number two, there are no IA systems right now that you can use to fix that problem. There's none. DEP is not stopping anybody from installing systems and trying them out. We are not. It's not a political issue. It's a technological issue. There's no systems that can get down to 8 milligrams per liter consistently. It has not been proven. And so, with that being said, why would we just encourage installation of systems that are not going to work or haven't been proven to work? Why would we?
I'll let somebody else
We're
respond.
talking about the wrong thing here. We are surely talking about, I don't know the objective of this meeting. I was invited to a last minute and I just popped in to listen. But if it's to promote habitat restoration, we should be speaking about multiple different technologies, not trying to fit septic systems or IAs into a box that's not going to be applied appropriately. Now, again, as I started, this is not a meeting where there's a grace for space for educational purposes or to even have a nice back and forth speaking, because I'm just observing how this is going. So I'm just going to say this and let it be. There's plenty of information online because there's a lot's been said, and I don't know where the data is coming from what you guys are talking about. These millions of dollars. I have not seen that. Okay, so it's best to speak about things that are backed by true data, not to just speak, because that's how false information is spread. All right. So it's not a political issue. Find a system, provide me a system, and then why don't you go help the manufacturers get them into the ground rather than blaming DEP for being an impediment to the process? Because we are not. There is no system that you can use. And if there is, prove it. That's all I ask. Prove it.
Yes, you're right about that one.
Now, there is an effort right now going on the Cape assessing our process. It's going through the MVWA organization on how the IA process goes about. And we are looking into that process as well to see if, it's efficient. We have to go through that process. People are poking at it, so we'll do the due diligence. So you may join the group of people that are speaking and looking into it. There's a meeting in May, and it's not all negative towards IAs. It's trying to figure out how they can be applied. Because as I said, if you try to apply them as a sole solution for habitat restoration, you're just going to be knocking your head against the wall. That's the wrong conversation to be had. And so you have to enter the conversation with grace for space for the right solution to be made, not applying it incorrectly. And so this group of people, the next phase of their conversations are going to be about financing. How exactly can we get IAs financed by what we're calling a responsible management entity, so there can be good testing and good oversight of them in a group applied municipal approach, rather than single application here, applying too much onus on the homeowners. Rather than doing that, having it a group approach and more oversight by the municipalities, which at the end of the day are responsible for meeting the TMDLs and ensuring habitat restoration. And so I can forward that information for the MVWA charrette part 2 to anyone, as well as the responses on the first meeting we had discussing the IA process and what potential room for flexibility we can offer. But lastly, I'll just repeat it again. You have to keep things within context. when you start taking things out of context, false information is spread. The IA program was not designed to fix problems on the Cape or the islands. It was not. Bill?
A quick question. What would you say is the reliable IA system in being reliable in producing an effluent, say, of 15 parts per million nitrogen, or even 18?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Well,
I haven't seen one yet.
I think they're out there,
I haven't seen one yet.
because I don't think anybody expects that we're going to be putting in systems that are getting down below maybe 10 parts per million at this point. But if we can put in systems that get down below 20 parts per million, we'll be removing a third of the nitrogen from our loading.
So look how you're playing with numbers here. You just jumped from 10 to 15 to 20.
Well, somewhere in that
Keep
range.
things within context. You have to keep things within context. 19, 20, that's referring to protection of public water supplies. So most of them have a baseline of 19. But 15, all right, now you're going to have to put that in a comprehensive wastewater management plan with other technologies to support an overall removal of nutrients. But again, I have not seen any technologies proven yet. And that's not on DEP. That's for the manufacturers and the communities to get those into the ground.
Exactly.
Even if we were to put in systems that are getting down to 20 parts per million instead of 35, that would be a significant reduction in the total load going into our coastal resources. Not the answer. I agree. Definitely not the answer. But it's a step.
It's a step, but then you don't want to throw good money after bad. And so if you're going to take a small step and feel good about it, 5 years later, it's acknowledged that you need to do more. Now you spent that money in vain.
Good point.
So that's what we want to avoid, is telling people, oh yeah, use this technology, which should get 19. And then 5, 6 years later, a regulation comes out saying, all right, the waters have gotten worse. You have to do more. And now everyone who spent the money for the 19 system is upset at DEP for saying, install that system. So
Drew, I
that's
want
what
to thank
we
you.
avoid.
Drew, I'm John Shirless. I'm an evolutionary biologist, conservation biologist. I want to thank you for speaking and for joining the meeting. For what it's worth, I find your response understandable, given that, as you say, you joined late. But your characterization of the meeting, and I don't know if you've been in Martha's Vineyard Water Alliance meetings before, is, I think you'll be pleased to know, not quite right with respect to the frame of reference of people in this group and what they're seeking and the nature and way that we speak with one another, which I would say is overwhelmingly one of mutual respect, and that we're here as an alliance coming out of the understandably defunct Martha's Vineyard watershed team, which was part of the previous governor of Massachusetts creation of watershed teams for the entire state, to share information, to learn from one another, to move things ahead. But what we all have in common, and that you may not know, Anna Edie, who was speaking, is sort of Paul Revere on this issue, who raised the alert about the consequences of what was found to be increased nitrogen levels from more than 20 years ago, as also was Bill Wilcox, who just spoke, who used to be at the Martha's Vineyard Commission as their water person, followed now by Sherry Casso. But what we've all seen is more than 2 decades of the consequences of a system that is required, that seems to be causing harm. So in this case, if we could borrow the dictum for physicians of first do no harm, in the first case, it's doing harm. So I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but my sense is that no one believes that, given where things are now, that even some optimal AI system, outside of science fiction, where there's a system that's actually pulling nitrogen out, the way we're thinking of using technology to pull nitrogen out of the atmosphere, or carbon rather, out of the atmosphere. That it's going to do habitat restoration. I think the context is just to say we're required to do Title V. It's causing harm. This is just something we can do now without letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, to mitigate the consequences that we've been suffering for 2 decades now from Title V. And I think, again, anyone can step in and say what they wish, but I think that your engagement in this would be enormously welcome by all of us, to help move things ahead and engage and find out. I mean, each person in this meeting is operating from their own idiosyncratic frame of reference. I mean, there's some commonalities. There are shellfish officers, there are Board of Health people, there are some people that may be the town selectmen and so on. And then there are others that are retired or doing this in an ad hoc way. But we all come at it from a different way, but what we all share is a passion and a desire to fix things. And so we would love to learn from you if you'll stay on the call.
I actually have to get to another meeting, but
okay.
From before I spoke, it sounded a lot like there was a movement being created to not necessarily undermine, but again, just be very overcritical of Title V and the IA program, for which, again, as I've been saying, was not designed to fix these problems.
Great. Okay, we have a very knowledgeable person with her hand up, and she's also, no? Yes, you are. And she's also a select person in the town of Oak Bluff. So Emma, please chime in.
Andrew, thank you for being here, and I hear your frustration, your position. But I have a quick question, and you can run to another meeting. Can you, in a few words, try to tell us what the IA program was designed for, so that we can have that in the right context?
Yeah. So the IA program was originally designed in knowing that Title V and where it was being located, there are some nutrient, how would I describe it?
Effluent, yeah.
Not necessarily effluent, but essentially to have some form of nutrient removal. Because if you have a Zone 2 or IWPA, we need to assure that there is some removal to protect drinking water supplies at the property line. And so the concentrations that are put forth are focused on that. Not so much of habitat restoration in ponds or estuaries. And so if you look in Title V, there is a reference to nitrogen sensitive in areas, but it's only defined by public water supply protection.
Yeah, right.
And it's a different level that's required for public water supplies than for what we are going for with the restoration of benthic habitats, eelgrass, restoring ecosystems to what they should be.
Andrew, what is your name again? Is it Drew? I'm confused.
Yeah, but my name is Andrew, but I go by Drew.
Okay, Drew, could you please, maybe you've been in touch with Sherry Casso at the Martha's Vineyard Commission.
Yes,
but
he's
could
in
you
touch.
please- What?
He is in touch. Yes.
Okay, good. So that she knows, what's going on and what the process is, so we don't feel like there's nothing happening, because I think some of us feel like there's nothing happening. And if there's a process going on, we would love to know about it and be part of it if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Drew, if you can forward that information to me, I will forward it to the group. I would love to, the group that's working on the Cape for the IA systems. That would be wonderful.
Yep, I'll send you the information. That's there's an effort led by NUIA, as I said. They had an original meeting in January to discuss the process, and then there'll be a future meeting in May to discuss funding. And then there's also a effort led by the Cape Cod Commission, focusing on how responsible management entities can be used to improve testing for these IA systems, and how exactly could they be put into a program. And so there is a watershed approach of applying them to try to promote habitat restoration rather than placing it on the homeowners for property transfers for when there would be a potential upgrade towards a IA system. And so two different fronts. The Cape Cod Commission one for responsible management entities have been slowed down a little bit to focus on the NUIA, but both are ongoing.
Great, thank you very much. I just want to echo what John said. We're just trying to do the best we can here. And Anna can get a little bit over the top and enthusiastic about things, but she's been studying this and working on this for a long time. And she means well, she really does.
All right, I want us all to be on the same team, because I do sit in a lot of meetings where it's anti-DEP, and at this point, I'm starting to lose patience for it.
Yeah, no, that's not what we are. We just want, things to move forward because we got a lot of issues.
I've definitely
good.
seen an evolution with DEP that, working with us and, they want to solve the problems as much as we do. So thanks,
Great.
Drew.
Thanks,
Thank
Drew.
you. Thank you, Drew. I really appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Okay, you too. You two get out and
Drew,
enjoy the
thanks.
sunshine.
Thanks a lot, Drew.
All right, let's see. Sherry, are we all set?
I think that's it. Anybody have anything to add? Emma, do you have any updates on your babies?
Well, okay.
The baby shellfish are good. We have lots of little scallops in the hatchery right now. If anyone, this is kind of a time of year, actually, if anyone wants to come see the baby scallops because you're too busy in the summertime, we're there 7 days a week. I don't even know. There's so many things going on and lots of good things, but I don't have my brain organized right now. So thank you. Bye.
That's fine.
Just have a little bit going on. Yeah. I was so disappointed that they closed the oyster season in Oak Bluffs.
It's a state thing. It ends the end of March every
Wait a
year.
minute, Edgartown's still going at it.
Because I think that Up Island is closed as well. Ayrtown's still going at it?
That's what somebody told me, told my wife.
It's slightly possible that they applied for an extension because you can apply for an extension.
Yeah, okay, it's not just, it's in Senji, right across from where I go. So
Yeah, but it's town by town. So take it up with the Shellfish Committee.
I'm gonna have to walk across and, figure where the town line is, right?
Yep.
Oh, boy.
So
All right.
I have something
No,
to
go
say.
ahead, Anna, you could
Yeah.
wrap it up.
Thank you. I feel like, it was interrupted. I asked for a discussion, asking, now let's talk about what we want to do about it. What are we going to do as soon as possible, reducing as much nitrogen as possible, as low as cost as possible. So that's the discussion that I wanted to have and that I feel did not perhaps happen. And so that's what I'm asking for.
Well, I think, we want to wrap this up by 2:00. I think if Sherry gets as much information from Drew as possible, and we can bring that back to the next meeting and invite him back to the next meeting and continue the conversation, in a friendly, productive manner, I think that's a great step in the right direction.
Well, I want to go, is there anybody who would be interested in joining a working group, I guess you might call it, to figure out exactly what it is that, how to remove as much nitrogen as possible, as soon as possible, with the least amount of cost. That's a working group that I would like to suggest right now. And I hope that as many of you as possible with that goal in mind would want to join, because I am entirely pessimistic about DEP doing anything to speed up our process.
I hear your pessimism for sure, Anna. But I think that maybe we don't normally, like, this group doesn't normally send a representative to another meeting. We just put it on Sherry basically.
I'm just
But may-
asking for, is anybody that's interested in working on
No,
this?
but no, sorry, this is a side thing, but in addition, or maybe in conjunction with the group that Anna would like to create, I think that we should also have somebody attending these meetings that DEP is working on.
Absolutely,
Like
yes,
they're sort of separate, but
yes,
he
they are.
kind of made it really clear that, we shouldn't be having a conversation without knowing what's going on in those
Right.
conversations.
Right.
You're
that's-
absolutely right,
definitely.
Emma. Thank you for pointing that out.
That's
Absolutely.
That's been the
Yeah, I
problem.
was not aware of the NUIA project that was going on, so I'm glad he
I
brought
don't
that
even know
up.
what WEA is. Is that an acronym or is that a real word?
It's an acronym.
What is it?
It is the New England Water Environmental Association.
Yep.
They're
Yeah.
mostly sewage or treatment plant guys. David
Of course.
Thompson would definitely know about that, because he was a member of
Invite him
NUIA.
in. Maybe we should invite him in. He might know some of the inside story about DEP and the sewage industry. He might. I don't know.
Yeah, you might. Well,
I don't
anybody who
know
wants to
does
work with Anna, they can get a hold of her outside of the
Right.
meeting.
Right.
Well,
So-
that will be part of the 208 plan that we're working for the Up Islands. The next section, we have the outline of the watershed and the data put together. And the next section will be alternatives for mediation. It'll include inlet openings. It'll include, phragmites. It'll include PRBs. It'll include IAs. It will include, anything we can think of. Shellfish, that's huge. So all those things will be looked at, and then we can use them and, see which one would apply best to that watershed.
And
Emma,
when
I'm
is
sorry.
When is
I'm
this
gonna be-
happening? When is this happening? Is it something that is almost ready to send, or is it something for the future?
That is the next section of the 208 plan, and it's happening now. Yeah.
Okay, fabulous, fabulous.
Great. Go
fabulous.
ahead, Emma.
I'm going to be giving I was asked to give a presentation up at the tribe that they're hosting with, I believe it's geared toward tribal communities. And I'm going to be teaching a workshop about bioextraction. Of course, I had to go ahead and say yes. And I don't know, so I'm putting together an hour and a half talk that I've never even given an hour and a half talk. I can talk, but I'm going to be doing that the first week of May. And I'm going to be getting together all of my notes and whatnot on bioextraction. So I'm going over seaweed and phragmites and shellfish, edible species and non-edible species. And I know that Anna's focus is, septic stuff, but other things that Sherry just threw out were they're basically bioextraction, other in pond things that we can do to remove nitrogen now that are going to make a difference now and not 20 years once my house gets onto a sewer line kind of thing. So that's something that, I don't know, maybe in the future I can I'll at least send it around after I've given it.
Is that going to be
Maybe
available?
we should set you up for the June meeting.
But and after I give it, maybe I can pare it down into a 20-minute version, right? No one wants to, and I'm sure and I think that there'll be a recording of it, and I'll be making a PDF of it and all that good stuff. So I don't know, just something else to add to the conversation.
Will there be a Zoom link for that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Let Sherry know if there is.
It's through the EPA, so I don't know how they're doing things.
Great. Okay, that's a lot to
Our
think
next
about.
meeting, we'll have Ken Carloni talking about biochar. He's going to come to our May meeting.
Great.
So
What's the date in May?
this was an off week because of the holiday, and I'm going away next week. So we usually go for the third week the third week. So it should be May 19th.
May 19th. Great.
Okay. And
Okay.
so that's after Climate Week. So then we should all send around a little bit of info about what we're doing for Climate Week, or if anyone needs anything, if they're taking part but need collaborators or anything like that. I mean, I don't know. We'll have to send that through email.
Right.
Just get it to me and I'll send it out to Water Alliance.
Yep. Give it to Sherry. She's a good job sending things out. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. I think this was a good meeting.
Can I just quickly follow up? Emma, I
Oh.
think you made a great point about representation and so on. And isn't one of the meetings that Drew mentioned next month? And if that's going to be before our meeting, I mean, is there maybe just out of this context, maybe if someone could somehow be in on that and report back, it'd be a good thing.
Yeah, that would be great.
Gary, maybe you can find the date of that and send that around, and then everyone can look at their calendars, and hopefully, you know, at least one person in your huge long list.
Can attend, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would
And
be
maybe
great.
it's not one of us right now, but maybe it's somebody else who's involved in their wastewater issues in their town. Anybody.
It's a good
I'll call
idea.
Dave Thompson and ask him to attend, because he can,
Yeah.
he can translate for us.
Yeah, that
Gail,
would be good.
see if Gail will
Very
go.
good.
Hope we all get the links that are needed in order to fully participate in this journey, you know?
Yep.
All
right.
spokes are real.
We really are going now.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Great to see
Thanks,
you.
Sherry.
Right. Thank you, John. Thank you,
Thank you all.
everybody.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.